All right, what's going on, everyone? I have a special treat for you all today. Joining me right now is Kris Pursiainen, who's a Knicks blogger for ClutchPoints. He's great. He's put out a lot of great scoops in the last couple of weeks about the Knicks coaching search. We're going to get into all of that. So without further ado, let's get right to it. And here he is, the darling of Knicks Twitter, Kris Pursiainen. Kris, what's going on, man?
How we doing? I don't know about the unofficial title, but I do know that it's great to be here. Good to chat with you as always, especially this is like the postseason, There's no off season yet in Knicks world, and I love it like this. It's like spring in New York City. Like there's like 3 fake springs and it goes back to being cold before you eventually get spring. Like this is the opposite of that. No tease of an off season, no thought that like they left no time for us to think we were going to get a couple of weeks off. I love that we're just right back into it. Time off will come when it comes.
I said this earlier today that by this point in the year, if the Knicks weren't going to be in the finals, that this was going to be a point in time in which I started to shift my focus to the Yankees, did a little bit more Giant stuff, and lo and behold, we are all entrenched in this extremely chaotic, and you may disagree with it, extremely chaotic coaching search from the New York Knicks, in which they've interviewed 5, from my count, 5 different, or they've tried, at least, put in requests to interview 5 different head coaches around the league, gotten denied by all 5 of those teams. And here we are right now. And you put out a lot of good stuff. Your content and your tweets have been extremely informative. And, I kind of want to pick apart your brain right now. So let's get into what you've heard, because obviously, it's June 12th now. You put out a lot of shit, and a lot of that stuff is not exactly newsworthy anymore. It's been reported by other people, or, it's been on your timeline for a long period of time. What have you heard? What's the latest you've heard about the leader or leaders in the clubhouse for the Knicks? Have you heard anything about that?
What I've talked about is the top tier, being that Finch, Udoka kid grouping of coaches. There's kind of like an undetermined tier, if you're trying to do like S, A, B, C, like the tier maker list, there has to be like one that's not ranked there, like off to the side. That's just like they probed the situation and they realized there was nothing to pursue. So there are some coaches there. I would say college coaches, former and current college coaches, probably make up the majority of that category. The other part of it too, Bryce, is that like college coaches, and especially, in this era, don't want anything to come out about a potential other job, because they want their donors thinking that the number one place they want to be in the world is where they're coaching right now. And in this NIL world, after that number one place they want to be, they want their donors to think the number 2 place they want to be is where they're coaching right now. Like there has to be no doubt, the dollars have got to roll in. And for that to happen, people have to feel like they're investing in something worth their while. So there has to be no doubt, so I wouldn't expect many college names to surface because of that. I do have a report coming out, from when we're recording this any minute now, regarding one college coach the Knicks have expressed some interest in, but not something.
Are you allowed to share that right now? This is not going to go out till tomorrow. We're recording it at 7:30 on Thursday. It's going to come out Friday afternoon. Is the report already going to be out? I believe so.
The report will already be out.
Okay, so go ahead.
Razorbacks head coach John Calipari, someone that the Knicks front office leveraged their relationships to touch base with regarding their head coaching vacancy. Sources tell ClutchPoints that a deal is not expected to be reached between the 2 parties, but definitely, again, just another step in this comprehensive search that the Knicks are undergoing. They're casting a wide net, and I think there's 2 ways to explain it. The first way to explain it is, if you gave me $40 cash, USD, green, and said, that's my budget for lunch, the first things I would do are think, what's the best food in the world? What's the food I like the most? Can I afford it with this budget? That's essentially what the Knicks are doing right now. They're looking at their dream candidates. Chris Finch is someone they've loved for years. For example, they're looking at their dream candidates, and they're just shaking the tree. They're making sure, because even if the apple looks like it's firmly on there, if they give the tree a little shake, a legal, non-tampering shake, it's worth finding out if the apple might fall or not. Also, a way of just trying to figure out what teams might be looking to do this offseason, right? Say the Rockets did allow them to interview a Udoka. Well, then all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, they're going to go for Kevin Durant. They're going to bring in a coach that he wants. It's a way of kind of trying to piece together what other teams are doing. The only way to find out is to ask, right? And that's one side of it. The other side of it is what Sam Vecini said the other day. He's with The Athletic draft coverage, and he does the Game Theory show. He said, like, this is a funnily public process, given how common it is for teams to send out a bunch of requests at the start of their process for the sake of finding out, and for the sake of due diligence, and for the sake of, well, if they're being told it's a 3-2 count and they're going to strike out no matter what here, why not just swing, right? Because if you happen to catch just scrape the ball in the right spot, maybe you get on the bases, or maybe you even hit one out of the park. So just a comprehensive process for the Knicks that involves lots of names that they themselves are not expecting to go into next season employing. But for the sake of both accruing intel and giving themselves as many chances as possible to make things happen that they want to make happen. This is a team that traded this past offseason for an NBL coach who's retired from Finland to facilitate the Mikal Bridges trade. So this is a front office that will do anything in the book. This is part of that. And that framing makes it sound like they're not the only front office that does this, which they're not.
Yeah, I mean, I think this whole casting a wide net is from the Ministry of Propaganda. I cannot, for the life of me, understand. I mean, I'm not saying this is like you're getting this from the team. Like,
you ever seen the Francesa and Schwartz thing, where Peter Schwartz is like, well, Mike, this is what the team is telling me. Like, the Jets are saying, and Mike is like, Peter, you got to use the noggin. And like, how can you tell me that?
And it's funny because Francesa is the one who thought it was Leon Rose behind everything. So he kind of, went against his own advice for Peter Schwartz. I just think that the whole casting a wide net thing, like, it takes into account, sure, like the fact that it's a thorough process. But you mentioned that other teams have done this. Have they ever done this on a scale like we're witnessing with the Knicks, with 5 different head coaches from good teams? I mean, besides Quinn Snyder, that was whatever. But we're talking about some of the best teams in the league, some of the best coaches in the league, who found a lot of recent success. For like my understanding of the situation, and from the multitude of times I've come on here and talked about what I believe is currently happening, I think that the Knicks are throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. I think there's no plan. I cannot remember the last time a head coaching search looked like this, where they fired a coach that took them to Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Did I agree with the decision to fire him? Absolutely. Great. Terrific. But it just does not seem like what has it been, 2 weeks? So in the immediate aftermath, these last 2 weeks,
9 days,
okay, a week and a half. Yeah, I guess, that's a good point. It was June 3rd, June 2nd. So in the last 10 days, and I'm not saying the Knicks should be hiring someone immediately, and I didn't expect that. But from what I have seen, from them going out and talking to all these different teams, getting denied, now getting firmly denied, not just regularly denied. You're hearing from Shams, firmly denied. So by doing this whole casting a wide net thing, they've managed to piss off every team in the league, not just the teams they've asked, but every team in the league, because they're looking at what the Knicks are doing and they think I mean, listen, they don't think they're idiots by doing this, but they think it's somewhat disrespectful.
Are other teams pissed?
Yeah, I mean, I from what I've seen from every team that now they keep asking, now it's firmly. Like they're going to continue asking teams. I don't think we've seen the end of it, and we're going to continue to see firmly. And maybe Shams is going to keep upping these, these adjectives behind what these teams feel about the situation. I don't know what it's going to be, but again, I think this whole casting a wide net, it's propaganda. Straight up.
I'm gonna put it like this: if teams, and listen, some front offices are on the newer side. Maybe this is their second off season dealing with the New York Knicks, but the same way that like when you're in a classroom growing up, and there's a class clown and there's a nerd and there's a jock and there's like people in any setting kind of fill roles, right? The Knicks are known as the nerd that's always going to ask the teacher if they forgot to collect the homework.
Are they known as that?
They're always going to do their due diligence. You're always going to get a call from them if there's any rumor about one of your good players being potentially on the market. They're going to call and they're going to say, "Hey, what do you want?" There's just one way to find out. If you're a Knicks fan, would you prefer that they're sitting at home refreshing Shams's feed to see if maybe a team with a top head coach is having trouble reaching a contract extension with that coach? Or would you rather just go find out and put the onus on the other teams? They're putting the ball in the court of the head coaches that they're reaching out to. What they're doing is they're saying, all right, if you have interest, you'll tell your team that you want the interview. And if you don't, you won't. But what they're doing is by putting the ball in the court of these coaches, they're as quickly as possible and as honestly as possible working their way down their true list of desired head coaches for next season. I would say right now, there's no like strong favorite to have the position next year. I also don't know why they're not being a strong favorite, especially when you just said you're not upset that they haven't made a hire by now. Like, I don't know why they're not being a strong favorite is indicative that this is a poor search from the Knicks. And I'll say it like this.
Hold on. I'm
if
not
this
saying
were the
because
Jazz,
there isn't a leading. I'm not saying because there's not a leading candidate right now that's why I feel this way. I equate it to you're on Instagram and you follow the extremely hot Instagram thought, right? And you're looking to DM this Instagram thought who's got a boyfriend very visible on the profile. You have no chance with them. You're going to strike out with them. You slide up in the DMs and you say, "Hey, what are you doing?" Or like you're hot or like the story. Like, what are the odds that's going to work out? 1 in a million. So it's like reaching out to, I guess, yeah, sure. You use the analogy of like shaking the tree and seeing if something falls out. Like, yeah, sure. What are the odds of that? What are the odds that the Rockets would have been like, you know what? We're going to let you take one of the the best young and up and coming coaches in the league when we're trying to build this franchise. When we're trying to grow, the culture of this team, yeah, go ahead and take Ime Udoka.
If you have an owner like James Dolan who's willing to spend on analytics, who's willing to spend on data tracking, shot tracking, who's willing to spend on front office personnel, on the coaching staff, who's willing to spend $30 million to move on from a head coach and bring a new voice into the organization, then you don't have a problem and you aren't causing a problem by finding out whether or not there is a situation around the NBA where a top flight head coach is looking for a raise and is not going to get one from the team under which they're currently employed. And in that situation, 22 plus NBA teams have nothing they're going to do about that. But there are a couple teams out there. I would say the Clippers. I would say the Knicks. I would say these teams with a lot of capital to spend and that they are not only willing to spend, but have shown they're willing to spend in recent years. Those teams should look to exploit those advantages in whatever way they can. I do feel a little bit like, if we want to stick with analogies here, if I can go cross sport, right? The NBA has a salary cap, has a second apron of hell that has been talked about ad nauseum this season because of the extent to which it's influencing the parity in the NBA. If we go and look at MLB, right? I do feel a little bit like the analytics departments, the coaching staffs, the nutritionists, right? The trainers, the doctors. These are all uncapped areas of team budget in the NBA. I feel a little bit like saying the Knicks shouldn't look to exploit their deep wallet feels a little bit like saying, oh, well, the Mets shouldn't have signed Juan Soto to the deal that they got him for, because if you really get down to the nitty gritty, he's not worth that amount of dollars per year compared to other players in the league. And it's like, well, the point is it doesn't matter. And so for the New York Knicks, I think for them to look to exploit that advantage they have is smart and the right thing to do. Now, maybe because they're the Knicks, this is more public of a process, I say, as I file a third piece this week on their process.
It's also the only team with a head coaching vacancy.
So who cares if they're just taking their time? They have been told that if the count is 2 balls and 7 strikes, that they get another pitch. So why would they not keep swinging? What do they lose?
They lose.
What are they losing?
They lose the respect of the rest of the NBA. The rest of the
who?
NBA.
According to
the rest
who?
of the NBA.
You?
From what listen, I'm not going to say from what I've heard, but
one cares.
Look at the verbiage.
No.
Look at the verbiage. Look at the verbiage of these Shams tweets. He can't explicitly say these other teams are pissed, but he's using the verbiage of the like this team firmly denied. I keep mentioning it, but it continues to get worse. They're going to keep asking teams. Also, here's the other thing. Let's say it went well and the team was like, sure, go interview the guy. And let's say, the Knicks came to an agreement with said coach. Some of these teams now, after all this has happened, might look at the Knicks and say, give us a first-round pick. Well, what are you going to do then? After you went out of your way to try to interview one of the best coaches in the NBA, the team said, you know what? F it. Go interview him. And then they come back and say, you really want him? Give us that capital. What happens then?
I think
what's your opinion on that?
I think so. That's a great question. And I think you're actually seeing that play out right now. I have spoken to this before, but I feel as if teams denying the Knicks permission to interview their head coach is them saying, we were unable to reach compensation that we agreed with. So now we're going to out them publicly. I don't think a team allows another team to interview their head coach that's currently under contract unless they're prepared for that head coach to jump ship. And with that said, then logically they would not allow a team to interview their head coach currently under contract unless the compensation was already agreed upon. Why? Because if it gets out that the interview went great and the coach is excited to, he really wants to join this new team, then how do you bring that coach back and tell your guys they have to be excited to play under this guy? It kind of has to happen at that point. So the compensation's got to be agreed to before the interested team and the interested coach speak. The reporting from Brian Windhorst was that there was mutual interest between Kidd and the Knicks, but the Mavericks denied their request to interview Kidd. I don't know what about that makes the takeaway become teams around the league now don't respect the Knicks.
You want to know why they did it? And this is like what I firmly believe. I firmly believe this. They did that because they don't want to be the one team to give in to the Knicks right now. That the Knicks continue to ask every single one. Listen, their head coach just took them to the finals the year before. There is some discord between the front office, and it's been widely reported between the front office, between Patrick DeMont, however you pronounce his last name, and Jason Kidd, because they told Jason Kidd an hour before they made the Luka trade. So there's this vitriol between the two sides. This is what it's been widely reported that was that, and that Jason Kidd was very upset. Listen,
it was widely reported? Well, no, it wasn't widely reported. It's what Jason Kidd told the media, and it's what Nico Harrison told the media. So that what's been reported is that's their story.
I don't know. I mean, from what I've heard, screw it. I'll tell you. From what I've heard, Jason Kidd wanted. I mean, listen. I mean, you heard there's mutual interest between the Knicks and Jason Kidd. Why? If let's say like they're putting out a cover story about Jason Kidd and the whole thing about finding out about Luka Doncic. Let's say that's a cover story, and let's say he really wanted to trade Luka. He was a part of the decision making. Why would there be mutual interest between the Knicks and Jason Kidd when they just got Cooper Flag? They are Kyrie Irving away from being, in my opinion, the clear-cut favorites to win the NBA Finals, a team that has a lot more talent than whatever the Knicks have right now. So with that being said, why would Jason Kidd have interest in coming to the Knicks with that? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. There clearly is something. Yeah, it's the story they put out, but there's got to be some truth to it if the Knicks and Jason Kidd had shared interest, or there's something else that we're not looking at right now. Maybe he's got I know he's got a house in the Hamptons. Maybe he belongs to a country club out there. Maybe he wanted to be closer to the country. Like, I'm just saying, there had to have been something else that led to the mutual interest, or he just loves Jalen Brunson that much. I don't know what it is. My takeaway from all this is that the stuff involving Jason Kidd and the Dallas Mavericks front office and the owner was indeed true. And, listen, he didn't like Luka. I think that's, I think that's been reported as well. He didn't love Luka Doncic. So the whole thing, I mean, it seems fishy to me. The idea that the Mavs, I'm not that the Mavs, listen, I think that the Mavs, if they were content with taking it, I don't know. I think what I'm trying to say, I don't know if your argument holds any truth about the compensation, about that needing to be agreed upon. I think there needs to be interest, and that if the coach really wants to leave, they'll take whatever they can get. If the coach gives the team an ultimatum, what are they going to do?
Right, but the team can get out in front of that. And I guess that's more so my point, is the team can easily get out in front of that by just making there be what, go back to your style of analogy from earlier, agreeing to the compensation ahead of any interview discussions is, for all intents and purposes, is a prenup.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a pretty good analogy. I'm not saying I totally agree with that, but that's a good analogy. That's a good analogy, but this.
And I can tell you that in conversations with people, in league circles and in NBA circles, it's been brought up to me more than once from more than one angle of any of these situations that the compensation is something that is more than likely going to be agreed to before any request is made or approved or interview happens.
But the interest has to be there before all that. There can't not be interest. Knicks aren't calling up. Knicks aren't calling up teams in which the coach is not interested.
How else do the Knicks find out that there's interest when they have a coach under contract? So,
dude,
they move on from Thibodeau. So what's the PR? So riddle me this. What's the PR if the Knicks come back from down 2-1 in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Pacers, and they don't lose game 4, they make it 2-2, and then it's a best of 3 series with 2 of those 3 games at the Garden. They win in 7, and then it comes out in the week leading up to the NBA Finals against Oklahoma City that the guy who is holding the clipboard in each of the 4 quarters of all the finals games that are happening for the New York side is someone that they were actively looking to replace and reaching out to people, their connections around the league, to replace in case they lost the Pacers series. That
was never a discussion before he was fired. It was the second he was fired, they were scrambling to figure it out.
Scrambling? Were they scrambling?
That's what it looks like. It really looks like that. The optics are that. They are. If the Knicks had someone in mind, okay, let me ask you this, because again, I prefaced all this by, you're very well connected. Have you heard about any option actually has any option that you've reported on actually been interviewed? Have the Knicks have interviews with any one of those guys? Let me just ask you that.
So they are still in just the process of reaching out to the agents of these coaches, to judge interest, to talk with them, scheduling interviews, whatever it is. I am not aware. Maybe interviews have occurred. I am not aware of any interviews having already occurred.
Yeah. If they had someone in mind, if they had a few coaches, they're like, hey, we really like those guys. we really want to, talk to them to bring them in. I think
that's
you would have seen.
That's what they're
I think
doing.
You would have seen a couple of interviews already.
You have seen them get denied.
You just said that they haven't.
You've seen them get denied with their 5 requests to different NBA teams.
There's no way that the plan was going to be, we're going to fire the coach who just brought us within 2 games of making the finals, and our plan is going to be to poach another head coach from another team. Like, that could not have been the plan. And if it was the plan, they didn't have a plan, because that was never likely. It was never realistic that they get any one of those guys. Maybe Jason Kidd. I'm sure they heard about Jason Kidd's mutual interest, but maybe there were rumblings of Tom Thibodeau getting fired. Maybe they heard that. And again, that's why it was reported that there was mutual interest. Jason Kidd was their number 1 option. That didn't come to fruition. That may have been true. Fine. But the fact that that was the first move they made to ask about all those coaches kind of screams to me that, we're just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. I
disagree with that framing, because I do think it's important to keep in mind, Bryce, that, and again, let's get back to your human relationship analogies, right? If you're with, say, a lovely young lady and she decides that she is better off going forward without you, regardless of who she finds, because there's just no longer a fit between you guys, she does not have to have Steve, Charles, and Peter lined up for steakhouse dinners that week. She does not have to get in a new relationship by the next Monday or by the next.
How would it look? How would it look if that girl started DMing other guys who were in relationships to try to get them out of each relationship? But there's no
rule that a woman has to have a boyfriend. A team has to have a coach.
That looks extremely needy, but there's no rush for either one of those things to do that. There's no rush for either. Like, yes,
there is a rush because the team has to have a. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? Tell Brunson to be like Elvin Hayes out there and Bob Cousy and player coach? No, they got to hire someone.
They'll Russell, yeah, they'll Russell.
They got to hire someone.
They do, but they do, and that's kind of what I'm saying is like I'm against that and the idea of like they don't need to have a coach right now. I'd like them to have a head coach at least a few days before the draft, so they actually have a plan that the head coach is in favor of. But I don't know, Chris. I think that I'm not going to argue against your analogy. Like I think that I think it's like slightly flawed, but at the same time,
I know it's flawed because that woman or that man does not need to be in a new relationship by market open on Monday. But the thing is, like, the Knicks do. And so, yeah, they're now testing the market and seeing what's out there. You're going to see more Taylor Jenkins reports. You are going to see the report I just had come out 10 minutes ago while we were talking. You're going to see them. There's some other names in the college universe that I believe they still have interest in. So you're going to see these things develop and happen. Let me
ask you this. From what we've heard and from what you put out specifically, and I understand, you've said that the Knicks are interested in college coaches, former head coaches, and assistant coaches. But from what we've heard, it appears the Knicks are only really interested, potentially, in former head coaches.
Thus far.
That's what we've seen.
That's the top of their list. You've seen the top of their list.
Is there any reason why there aren't any assistant coaches at the top of the list alongside former head coaches?
There are, but those assistant coaches are in the tiers below.
So you're saying I know that we discussed this tier system and yada yada yada. But what you're saying is the Knicks are going to try to get each one of those guys first and then transition to the next tier if they don't get those guys.
Yeah. So, they're going out there right now and they're saying, okay, what is the absolute best we can do, right? The whole sell. I remember when the Knicks hired Brock Aller, what part of the sell with him when I was trying to figure out who the hell this guy was one of the quotes was he can rank every piece of paper in the NBA by its value. And so if the Knicks are doing that, if that's what they do, and they have a coach that they love, say, I'm not saying they have some grading system, but say they love a coach 98.57% of the way, and then there's another coach they love 98.37% of the way. How the hell do they know that? They have to talk to these people. They have to judge whether or not they're even worth looking into. I really do believe, to say it in a sentence, I really do believe that because this is the New York Knicks, the extent to which this process is public is what is making people feel like it's so unorthodox, because it is unorthodox given what we're used to in the NBA landscape. But
that's what I believe.
As Sam Vecini said, as I'm saying, this is not unorthodox. It's just loud and public because it's the Knicks.
When was the last time a team has done this? Requested to interview 5 separate head coaches. I was trying to rack my brain earlier today to try to figure that out. I think you're more knowledgeable about the game. And
can I just read you the Vecini tweet that he put out yesterday that I think said it in 280 or less. What he wrote was the following: do wonder how much of this, quote, the Knicks are getting turned down by coaches, end quote, thing is just that it's the Knicks coming off a conference finals berth and a semi-controversial coaching firing. But
that doesn't. Okay, keep going.
Teams do reach out to talk to coaches employed by other teams. It happens, LOL.
Okay, but that's not telling me that teams have done it to this extent. I think Knicks, Nets, Kings, no matter who it is, if they're going around the league asking this many teams, no matter what team you are, no matter where you play, this would come out and this would be a story. It may not be as big of a story. It may not encompass half of the national reporters around the NBA, but it would be a story, even amongst the NBA finals, and which has been a really good NBA finals thus far. The Knicks are dominating the media because it's the Knicks. I agree with you on that.
Right?
But don't you think if another team was doing the exact same thing, some of it would get out? You can't tell me no. It would come out. It's the NBA.
I can tell you that the fact that Kevin Durant is expected to be traded by early next week, potentially, and these things are still coming out is proof that it's the Knicks. I think it's the Knicks factor here is huge. And the fact that this is rivaling KD stuff is, I think, a huge thing here.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to have to agree to disagree on that. I don't know. I can't remember the last time I heard a team doing this. And again, I think what you're describing here makes sense, to anyone who's listening to this. And this is what I've been saying, because I obviously disagree with what the majority of Knicks Twitter is putting out. The people that still believe that Leon Rose is the one behind all this. You're entitled to believe whatever you want to believe. There's a lot of stuff being put out by all these Knick beat reporters, and it's something I want to discuss with you here. What do you think is going on with the discrepancy from what we're seeing from all these different Knick reporters regarding what's happening behind the scenes? What are your two cents?
Which discrepancies?
So you hear from Begley that James Dolan played no part in the decision to fire Tom Thibodeau.
Did he say no part?
He said he backed Leon Rose's decision. So Leon Rose made the decision, and James Dolan said, "Okay, sounds good. I'm fine with paying the $30 million over the next 3 years." Other reporters and other people, you hear Chris Mad Dog Russo. He's seemingly the day of, and he's obviously backed that point up every single day. He seems convinced the fact that James Dolan was the driving force behind it. And you've seen other reporters out there say the same. But Ian Begley, he is, sticking to his guns. There are other Knicks reporters who are saying the exact same thing. You are a Knicks reporter yourself. Why do you think that?
I do think there's something to the mania that happens when something happens with the Knicks, especially if it's controversial, right? They're asking the mayoral candidates about the firing of Thibodeau.
Yeah. Stupid.
I think that, as things trickle out, you get a sense a little bit of who's getting what from where to an extent, with someone like Francesa putting out right away this is a Leon Rose decision. This is a Leon Rose decision. It makes you feel a little bit like he might be buddies with, someone in someone else's camp.
That's the thing. I don't mean to interrupt you, but like one of the reasons why I feel like this whole dysfunctional process, it appears there's a lot of finger pointing behind the scenes. If all these people who've got reputable sources in their own mind are coming out with different versions of the events that took place a week and a half ago, isn't that a little sus? Isn't it a little suspect?
I think Begley being consistent in saying it was Rose driven, it is loud, because to me that's not him saying it was all Rose. It's not him saying Dolan had nothing to do with it. It's not him saying, you know what I mean? But there is a little bit of an aspect of like basically everyone was part of this, but Leon had the say or the final say or whatever. So that's something I think is worth discussing. And when you look into that further, like something Begley himself reported was that like Rose would not have just allowed the situation to be ownership makes him fire Thibodeau, new coach hired, that's it. Either he would have put up enough of a fight to where he would have resigned or been fired himself. Like that was the messaging right away from Ian there. So you have to think there's something to that as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think as time goes on, we'll find out more and more. But I do believe that your insight is very much respected and appreciated from me, and I know it's respected amongst your millions of Twitter followers. So, or whatever the hell you want, X, whatever. You're on Blue Sky as well.
Millions.
You tried to get me into Blue Sky. It's not happening.
I got a nice community on there, man.
Not that I'm against it, but like
got a couple thousand people that like to talk hoops.
You probably have more followers on Blue Sky than I do on Twitter. So yeah, I'm doing something wrong.
Well, no, I think it's nice to put things multiple places. I don't know.
I think I need to start getting sources within the Knicks organization. Start putting out my own reports.
There you go.
But dude, I appreciate this, and you can see
who do you want? Who do you want them to hire?
I guess you want to do this. You want to do this last, and then I'll let you go. I didn't want to keep you too long. We're already like
no. I want to know who you want, man. I'm curious whether you record it or not. I'm curious. Might as well record it.
Who do I want? I'm a big Johnny Bryant guy. I think the Knicks need to go outside the box here. He offers continuity when it comes to being the associate head coach under Tom Thibodeau, an assistant under him for 4 seasons. He also just went to Cleveland and learned under who I believe is a top 3 offensive mind in the NBA, and Kenny Atkinson. It's someone I desperately wanted the Knicks to hire instead of Tom Thibodeau. He goes to Cleveland. They've one of the best offensive seasons in NBA history. He was the assistant there, the associate head coach under both those head coaches. There's the continuity as I said, with Tom Thibodeau being his head coach, and then, of course, with him going to Cleveland and taking part in one of the greatest offensive seasons we've seen in NBA history. What about you? What do you want?
Well, there's no one I want the Knicks to hire. I would say maybe the best hire they could make.
Who's your choice? Come on. Give me some subjectiveness here. You too objective. Give me an opinion, Kris.
I like
Kid. For the fan.
I like Kid. I like Kid if they can make it happen.
He's out of the question.
I don't think he is. I don't think he is. I don't think he is out of the question.
From what we've heard.
You're hearing right now, he's not out of the question.
There you go. There you have
it. Steve Popper has said he doesn't think their pursuit is over. James Edwards has said doesn't think their pursuit is over. Isola said the same thing. And I put as the H2, like the headline 2 in my article about John Calipari that just came out during this show, the recording of this show. I put underneath that the ClutchPoints can corroborate as well. They're reporting that the Knicks' pursuit of Kidd is not over. I know people are warming up to the thought of Taylor Jenkins or Mike Brown. I would be interested in a Maverick special of Jason Kidd and Terry Stotts. I don't know what financially it would take to lure Stotts away from Golden State, I believe, where he is now. Kenny Atkinson did the Steve Kerr boot camp for head coaches trying to get back to being head coaches. I think Stotts is doing that boot camp now as well. Could the Knicks entice Stotts in a Van Gundy type role where he's just completely in charge of one side of the ball? And there's precedent for this. So there was a team that kept going up against the wall, kept hitting the wall, had a star, unconventional play style and build and skill set for their size, unconventional star, and a roster around that star that was not all-star laden, right? It was a team of depth. And this team kept going up against the wall, kept getting stuck until they hired Terry Stotts, who came in and stopped head coach Rick Carlisle from calling so many sets on every play and every time down the court, who instituted more of a motion offense involving more of the team's depth. And it was not a read and react offense. It was a motion offense where the ball spread around the court. That guy, after helping lead the 2011 Mavericks to a championship with his offensive strategy, landed a coaching gig of his own, got some experience working on a team where the best player was a small point guard. And after leading the Portland Trailblazers to several years with good offenses, with a Lillard and McCollum core, Stotts is now getting experience coaching Stephen Curry under Steve Kerr. I like him as a lead voice on the Knicks bench, particularly if they go with a candidate with no head coaching experience like a Johnny Bryant. I do think Stotts could complement him really, really nicely. Mike Brown as well, but if I were Mike Brown, I wouldn't give out hope on landing another head coaching job, especially with what I think might happen with the Kings this offseason. So I think people will look a little more fondly on Brown's tenure there if things happen to melt down in Sacramento.
Speaking of messes, that's a disaster. I thank God every day that I'm not a Kings fan. They're looking for a top point guard. Well, newsflash, you had two top point guards at the same time, and one of them is currently 2 games away from winning the NBA Finals. So whatever happened there, that was a mess. All right, Kris, appreciate it, man. And obviously, if you want to check out where what Kris is doing and all the amazing content that he puts out and articles and reports, yada yada yada, at Kris Pursiainen on Twitter. I'm assuming you're the same thing on Blue Sky.
No, I'm actually
okay.
I'm actually KRISAP on Blue Sky, just Kris AP.
A lot easier to digest. Maybe you should.
It's not available on.
Damn.
Damn. We're trying. Right. We're trying.
You got to figure that out. You got to offer a first round pick to whoever. You got to offer some draft compensation to lure whoever has that handle over to you. All kidding aside, dude, really appreciate this. And,
of course,
always one of my favorite Knicks Twitter personalities for a reason. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, man.
Thank you, sir.